Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is digital host A.J. Wuest here, welcoming you back to Before the Four, the live stream where I take you through some of 48's top news stories and then some before our 4 o'clock newscast. Wherever you're watching right now, whether it is on Facebook, YouTube, or the 48 Now live stream, of course, as always, thank you so much for watching and spending just a little bit of your Wednesday afternoon with me here at the Before the Four desk. Now, I think we have quite a bit to jump into today, so I think it is time we jump into some of today's top stories. And starting it off with a big story, a Florida doctor's medical license in Alabama has been temporarily suspended after being accused of fatally taking out the wrong organ of an Alabama man in Florida. Now, this, of course, is Dr. Thomas Shagnovsky's license to practice medicine in the state of Alabama. It was suspended by the Alabama Medical Licensure Commission earlier today. Officials say the doctor has been licensed to practice in Alabama since 2016. He is accused of removing William Bryan's liver, that is who you see on screen there, instead of his spleen, which ultimately led to Bryan's death. Now, according to court documents, a hearing is set to take place on December 18th to determine whether Shagnovsky's medical license should be revoked permanently. And now, with under 1 week to go until Election Day, many here in Alabama are getting ready to cast those votes. But there's no early voting here in the state of Alabama. Earlier today, I spoke with 48's Daquan Lee, who's speaking with officials today on the early voting situation here in the state. And take a listen. Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the 48 Now desk. I'm digital host A.J. Wuest, and today I am joined with 48 reporter Daquan Lee. Daquan, we are just under a week to go until Election Day, but there is no early voting here in the state of Alabama. Daquan, today you've been speaking with state officials, and what are they telling you is the reason why there is no early voting here in the state of Alabama?
Well, AJ, when I reached out to the office of Secretary of State Wuest Allen, he wasn't able to give me an interview, but he did provide me a statement where he told me that he sees this as Election Day, not election month. Right now in Alabama, there is no early voting throughout the state. However, the one way that people can cast their ballot early is through an absentee ballot. And even on that absentee ballot, you would need a valid reason for your vote to be counted. And the reason that this is set up this way is because Secretary of State Wuest Allen sees initiatives like early voting as potential chaos at the ballot box. They would prefer to keep it so people will vote on the day of, and if needed, within the valid reasons to cast their ballot early.
Very interesting. And what does this mean for when Election Day finally does arrive? What does the lack of early voting mean for the voters here in the state of Alabama?
Well, AJ, this afternoon I've been talking to a bunch of people here at Big Spring Park, and everyone seemed to be on the side of early voting in the state of Alabama. I spoke with a few people who are actually from out of state, even in Tennessee, as close as that state. And when I talked to them about early ballot voting, they told me it was convenient. They saw no reason to do otherwise, and they saw the idea of waiting the day of the election to vote as a way to have to choose potentially between going to their job or casting that ballot, and they didn't want to be put in that position. So for people in Alabama who don't have that option to vote early, potentially it means waiting in long lines to cast their ballot, or potentially having to choose between going to your job or casting your ballot, like I mentioned.
And Daquan, did Secretary Allen, did he add any potential for this early voting matter to change, or is he pretty much set in stone that there will not be early voting here in the state?
AJ, as I can report, Allen is not considering any kind of early voting initiative. In fact, I spoke to the former Secretary of State, John Merrill, and in fact, he told me that this is something that should be studied by empirical data to find out if early voting would actually increase voter turnout. That was one of the only parameters where he saw any kind of interest in early voting.
Great. Thank you so much, Daquan. Awesome. Thanks again to Quan. And speaking of voting, let's now turn it over to NBC's Alice Barr with the latest in the campaign trail.
And I did this work.
In the final days of the presidential campaign, dueling speeches, former President Trump rallying supporters in Pennsylvania.
I'll protect our jobs. I will protect our borders. I will protect our families.
As Vice President Harris delivered her closing argument.
I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions.
Speaking from the same spot where former President Trump rallied supporters before the January 6th Capitol attack, she warned a second Trump term would bring more serious consequences.
This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power.
The former president, meanwhile, seized on comments from President Biden, talking by Zoom with a Latino group about a comedian's racist joke at the Trump Madison Square Garden rally Sunday, calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Remember Hillary? She said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right?
President Biden later clarifying that he was referring to the, quote, hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally. The Trump campaign says the comedian's comments don't reflect Mr. Trump's views.
Probably he shouldn't have been there, yeah.
All as Vice President Harris seeks to cast herself as a unifier, arguing that former President Trump calls those who disagree with him the enemy, while
I'll give them a seat at the table.
Contrasting visions in a race down to the wire. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Thank you, Alice. And now let's talk about those rain chances here in the Tennessee Valley. 48's Brad Travis has the latest forecast. What's up, Brad?
All right, AJ, right now not much going on. We actually had a little bit more activity radar-wise with the rain in northeast Alabama, and it's a good thing you had some today because you won't get much tomorrow until probably after 10 o'clock tomorrow night in northeast Alabama. But leaning towards 48 first alert weather day tomorrow. It's nothing extreme. It's just about the change in the weather, and make sure you're prepared for some rain out there, especially after 5 o'clock in northwest Alabama. And that area in yellow, trick-or-treaters are going to be wet, and make sure you're prepared for that. And then after 7 o'clock, it kind of transitions to the east into the Huntsville metro area. Here's a quick look hour by hour. Tomorrow morning, we actually start off warmer than we have in nearly a month because of the added humidity. We won't start with rain, but rain chances will pick up throughout the late afternoon and early evening hours. Notice by 3:30, right along the state line, again, there's nothing severe, but we could see some thunderstorms with all this activity as it moves to the east. And by 8 o'clock for Huntsville, Arab, and down to Coleman, on its way into Scottsboro, Albertville, and eventually Fort Payne. So again, 48 first alert weather day looking more likely as we head into the next 24 hours for rain on into the morning commute Friday. So that's really going to be the big issue. We've got trick-or-treaters out there walking in the rain. We're not going to deal with any power outages, severe weather, anything like that, but there will be some lightning out there you may have to deal with too. And then the Friday morning commute could have an impact just from slick roads out there due to the fact it hasn't rained in a while and the fact that there's going to be leaves out there at those stop signs, and those are hard to stop on as well. But that's pretty much the gist on that. No surprises to your forecast. Things are going as planned right now. AJ?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brad. And now an update on a story out of Hartselle we've been following for some time now. A man accused of poisoning his wife with lead back in 2022 has entered his plea. This all according to court documents we've recently received. Brian Mann, who you see on screen, entered his not guilty plea on October 24th. Mann is asking for the evidence of the lead found in the victim's urine to be suppressed from the trail. He said in a motion filed on Wednesday that the evidence was gathered by police back in the parking lot of the Hartselle Police Department using a 5-gallon bucket and a strainer. Mann was released from the Morgan County Jail earlier this year. However, he is required to wear a GPS monitor and stay in the Morgan County Jail each weekend. Mann has a pre-trial hearing on November 7th, with the trial currently set for November 18th. And now in DeKalb County, where a teacher convicted of sex crimes involving students is now being sued by the victims and their fathers. The father, identified only as John Doe, filed the lawsuit against Dustin Dalton, that is who you see on screen there. The lawsuit alleges Dalton exploited his position as a teacher and a coach at Sylvania High School to groom and engage in sexually inappropriate behavior. This involving two different minors. Dalton pled guilty 2 years ago and was sentenced to prison with 3 years to serve behind bars. The lawsuit seeks punitive and monetary damages. And now heading over to Scottsboro, where school officials confirmed today that a person at Scottsboro High School has the whooping cough. Whooping cough, obviously a highly contagious respiratory disease. At this time, we are unsure if it is a student, teacher, or staff member. The assistant superintendent says the school nurse is working with those who have come into contact with the person who is sick. And now a story in case you missed it. A Huntsville mother still looking for answers nearly 2 months after her 15-year-old son was shot and killed here in Huntsville. Now she has set up a memorial for her son. 48's Nick Ballinger with the story.
15-year-old Philip Fletcher was killed on September 3rd when 3 people in another car fired a gun into a car that he was in. It ended here on Max Luther Drive in Huntsville, but it started here on the corner of Memorial Parkway. That's where his mother, surrounded by Fletcher's friends and family, set up his memorial today.
We're just going through a lot because it should never happen. He was just a bright child. He just liked to eat and play his video game and hang out with his friends.
He was headed to a high school football game with his friends when bullets started flying. Glenda Wesley says she still doesn't know why.
I have no clue. Just the kids need to put the guns down. It's my main focus. Because if it weren't for the guns, my baby would still be here.
Several gathered and brought flowers to remember the late teen.
It means a lot to me that so many people loved him. Means a lot.
Court records reveal 16-year-old Teray McCrae and 2 other minors are charged with capital murder. All 3 had preliminary hearings last week, and their cases are now being sent to a grand jury.
I don't have no anger towards them. I just wish they would have thought before they acted.
A very sad situation there. Thank you, Nick. Now another story in case you missed it. 2 Huntsville police officers are under investigation. 48's Callie Neese with more.
Multiple sources told 48 News that both Julian Johnson and Jefford Wright are in the middle of this investigation centered on one case with several incidents. Johnson has been with HPD for decades, and Wright has been on the force for more than 10 years. In August, we reported the accusations focused on an improper relationship with a suspect who is out on bond. The case has been reported to Internal Affairs, but a Huntsville attorney says that the state attorney general's office was called when nothing was done. We put in a Freedom of Information Act request for the officer's personnel files. After almost a month, we received the documents. However, Wright's records for his 2022 and 2023 personnel evaluations were not included. Wright is a high-ranking officer who works for the Internal Affairs Department. Internal Affairs is in charge of investigating the conduct of its officers. We then submitted another public request specifying information for both officers' internal affairs files. In an email sent to 48 News today, City Attorney Eddie Blair confirmed that these were indeed the officers under investigation, but he could not release the internal affairs files to us because of the ongoing investigation.
Thank you, Callie. And now in Moulton, where 48's Aria Pons was yesterday, reporting on whether or not a baby box will soon be coming to Lawrence County. Aria?
While the future of the baby box in Moulton is unclear, officials say they just can't install it right now. They say they want to be able to follow every single regulation by Safe Haven before going forward. Safe Haven is an organization that makes these baby boxes that allow parents who want to give up their baby the opportunity to do so anonymously. There are already 10 in Alabama, including one in Muscle Shoals, one in Athens, and one in Madison. Moulton City Council approved a baby box installation at the beginning of 2024. It was supposed to be installed at Fire Station 1. Last week, Moulton Fire Chief Brian Phillips told the council that they wouldn't be able to install the baby box at this time. He says it's because they wouldn't be able to ensure the baby could be removed from the box 5 minutes after being dropped off, which is a time limit set by Safe Haven. Chief Phillips says there's normally just one person on shift at the fire station. The fire department covers around 135 square miles, so if there's a call over 15 minutes away, they wouldn't be able to make it back to the station in time to take the baby out of the box. I have reached out to city officials to see where they'll go from here, but haven't heard back just yet. Reporting in Moulton, Aria Pons, 48 on your side.
Thank you, Aria. Well, are you farm living or are you Park Avenue? What's your vibe? That is the question. The Farm Living on Park Avenue Gala, presented by Next Step Farms, is coming to Stovehouse this Saturday at 6, and all for a good cause. There'll be dancing, there'll be a live auction, and of course, some awesome entertainment and tasty foods. Today, I was able to speak with Robin Kramer and Beth Keys, both with Next Step Farms, and take a listen to what Robin had to say proceeds for the event goes towards.
We are growing. As you've heard us say a minute ago, we're gaining 2 clients each month. It's time to add on to our facility that we just moved into a year ago. Part of our curriculum is teaching healthy habits, habits away from screen time. Meaning building that relationship. We're already at a deficit trying to build social skills and trying to learn special skills. So we're teaching them extra things like painting and knitting and music. Sewing. And matter of fact, we have a quilt being auctioned that night that our clients have made that it's unbelievable. We need a space designated to just that, because what we see is every afternoon our individuals start working on something and then we have to bundle it up and put it away until the next afternoon. This additional space that we want to build will become our healthy habits area, and they can leave it out and then resume and pick it back up when they come back in the next day. So we're excited about that.
Right, absolutely. It's great to see you guys growing and continuing to expand your facility. That is great. And awesome interview there, and all for a great cause. You can find that full 48 Now interview on our website. Just go to WAFF.com. You'll go to digital shows, and then finally 48 Now. It's the latest one up. But another event going on this weekend, maybe you're a movie fan and would like to get the whole squad together for a little spooky film watching this Halloween season. The Huntsville Film Fest is where you need to go. With films you can't find anywhere else in the Southeast, it is the place to be, and it's free. That is the best part. The other day I spoke with festival director Kitty, and take a listen to what Kitty had to say about horror films and community building.
Horror film brings people together. You don't go to your buddy and say, hey, let's go see that rom-com that came out this weekend.
No.
That doesn't bring people together. But if you text everybody and say, hey, there's that scary movie that came out, like, let's all go see that, everybody wants to come see it. So it's like a natural building of like people, like a community. Instantly people want to go see. It might not even be your favorite genre, but people show up for it. There's something about gathering and getting a little spooked that's kind of bonding. And that's how you are with horror films growing up. It's like, as teenagers, everybody likes to go see a little spooky movie together. It's thrilling. So just developing that as you grow, it just brings people together. So I grew up watching horror films. I love horror. It was just something very instant for me. And as I've gotten older, I have been able to use, my experience watching a million horror films in different ways.
Yes, the Huntsville Film Fest, that event going on at Stone Event Center in Campus 805 this Friday and Saturday, completely free. Again, I just That's just the best part. If it's free, that you just got to go, you know. But you're just not going to want to miss it. And speaking of the things you're just not going to want to miss, let's head into the stories you're just not going to want to miss in our evening newscasts. Concerns surrounding Decatur Morgan Hospital ambulances. 48's Noah Cowell will have that story for you all coming up. Another story you're just not going to want to miss, the latest on a local amendment in Lauderdale County. 48's Aria Pons has that one. And finally, a free program to learn more of your risk for cancer. Get these stories you're just not going to want to miss coming up in our evening newscasts. And it is that time. That is right. What time is it? It is time, of course, for Facebook fun. That is right. The 48 Facebook question of the day kind of pairs with 48's Daquan Lee. His story today, Alabama early voting. You all heard from Daquan earlier at the top of the show. But let's see what you all had to say about this. Stacy said, yes, it is hard to go after work when you have other events you have to get to. I 100% understand that, especially like if you're working a 9 to 5 shift or a 9:30 to 6:30 shift. It's hard to find the time to vote on election day when before the polls close. So that is a very fair point. Let's see what else y'all have to say. We have a no, that is all right. We can all agree to disagree. That is the best part about living here in the United States, of course. But Rebecca said no, none of the states should have early voting or mail-in ballots. Go vote like it's always been, or go to the courthouse and do an absentee ballot. Very fair point there, Rebecca. Thank you so much for commenting. And then LaQuetta Atkins, she said yes, or make Election Day a federal holiday. That is another very fair point. Thank you all for commenting. But that is just about it for today's Before the Four. I want to thank you all for sticking around with me and spending a little of your Wednesday afternoon here on Before the Four. If you haven't already done so, download the 48 digital app, the 48 First Alert Weather app, and of course, the 48 Sports Zone app. Turn on those push notifications, and you will never miss a breaking story. But with that said, I want to thank you for watching. You all have a great night.